Hey guys, it's Anfield here, and welcome to the T-54 first prototype review video. It's a new Russian medium premium coming out in 9.7. Wargaming have kindly given me one on the 9.6 live server to test, and so I played a few battles in it. I've gotten a good feel for the tank, and I want to use this video as a chance to discuss the new tank and show you guys whether it's worth it or not. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so to get this started, I'll make a small pros and cons list, and this will be useful to give you what the strengths are and what the weaknesses are of the tank. I could just spew off stats, but anyone can spew off stats. What's important is how the tank actually plays in the game, because stats aren't always an indicator of how the tank is going to perform, unfortunately. So we'll start off with the pros, and then we'll move on to the cons, and you guys should get a basic idea of how the tank can perform in an actual battle. Okay, so starting with the pros, the first thing that I want to talk about is this tank's armor. It has fantastic frontal armor. Its turret is solid and its front plates are solid as well. This is incredibly useful because in tier, it means that a lot of tanks will struggle to pen you, tier 7s will almost never pen you, tier 8s will struggle, and even tier 9s can have a bit of a hard time. You can also get some wicked pounces against tier 10s, although I wouldn't really rely on it. Not only is the turret in the hull strong, also the side armor is pretty reliable too, and in the current meta where you can side scrape a lot and where that's an important skill to know, this tank can put that to good use, so that's a huge plus. So the next thing that really stood out to me about the T-54 first prototype was just how good its gun depression was. I was actually astonished about how amazing this tank's gun depression was, because it's a Russian tank. It has no business having great gun depression, but it does. And I don't have to preach to you guys about why that's such a great thing. We're talking about getting shots in areas where you would otherwise not be able to, just poking over hills getting shots, and this goes really well with its well armored and small turret, because you can get over a hill, get a shot, and the enemy would have no chance to retaliate. So the next three pros that I want to talk about, I'm going to lump together. They're not actually related, but because they're not quite as great as the first two, they're just good on the tank. I'll just quickly talk about them. So it does have good DPM, which is obviously useful. I mean, duh. It's not quite CDC Pen 3.8 DPM, but it's good. So there's that. There's also a low profile. I did talk about the turret briefly. Well, the tank itself is small, and a low profile is very useful in the game, for concealing yourself, making yourself hard to hit, and that is very, very, very useful. And also, when I was playing the tank, one, I never got set on fire, two, I barely lost crew, and three, it didn't really have a vulnerable module. So not having vulnerable, like the CDC gets ammo racked every time a breeze picks up. This tank, no real outstanding vulnerable modules. Okay, so let's talk about the cons. What about the T-54 first prototype is not so great? Well, the first thing I would bring up is that it has low penetration. Its penetration on AP is 175, while its APCR is 235. Now, this is not such a terrible thing because it's pretty standard for most premiums, and you guys are going to be used to it by now. Bar standouts like the FCM, the Yagd 8.8. Most tier 8 premiums have pretty terrible penetration. So the next thing I want to talk about is a lack of preferential matchmaking. Now this is kind of a big deal for this, and we'll have to get used to this idea because Wargaming don't seem interested in releasing any more preferential premiums. So the problem here is that this tank does not do well once it's out of its comfort zone at tier 8. It may be able to bully a tier 8 game, but when you put it in a 9 or a 10, it can start to struggle because it has 175 penetration, and that's just not good enough. Even the 235 in the APCR still will struggle, especially at tier 10. So next, we need to go back to the gun and talk about the gun handling, which is pretty poor. It doesn't aim that quickly, and its accuracy when it does aim is underwhelming at best. It feels more like you're trying to play the SDV1 without the penetration, rather than playing a T-62A, which obviously aims in fast and is very accurate. So this is going to be more of a problem once you get to the higher tiers and you're forced to play that because of lack of preferential matchmaking, and you're going to struggle to hit weak points, and you're going to have to expose yourself for longer to get the shots off reliably. So the last two things I want to talk about are a little picky, so I'll put them together. and go over them quickly. One is the low ammo capacity. It's got the same ammo capacity as a Type 59, and it's not enough. You're going to struggle to carry, and I've already had it once where I've ran out of rounds on a very hard carry, and if I had the rounds, I probably could have gone on to win it. But I didn't. I ran out of rounds, and that was it. So on long, drawn-out games, that's going to suck. The other problem is that it's got pretty poor maneuverability. It struggles to accelerate and get to a top speed, which is then underwhelming. It reminds me a little bit of the Fe-42 too, in that sense. So now that we've got an idea of what the strengths and weaknesses of the T-54 first prototype is, let's compare it to some of its peers, the other Tier 8 tanks. So let's start out with the harsher comparison, which is against regular 8s. Now regular 8s are basically better than premiums, so this is going to be harsh. But in fairness, a Tier 8 mediums are really not that great. There's 3 that I picked out off the top of my head, and I may be missing one, that I think are the best 3, and that's the Object 416, the T-69, and the Pershing. Those are the ones you'll see in esports. Those are the ones that are the real good Tier 8 mediums, although I'd still probably rather take an IS-3 or such. But they're the best. Now, how does it compare to these things? Well, it'll struggle. The Pershing is probably the one it'll do best against, I think, because it has a better turret, it has relatively equal depression, it still has low profile, so I think it'll do well against the Pershing. It doesn't have great pen, but it doesn't need it to beat a Pershing. The Object 416, well, the 416 has big alpha, it has that heat round, and I think the heat will really benefit it against the T-54 first prototype, so I think you can count it out there. The T-69 has that clip power. Yes, it can't kill the T-54 in a clip, but I think it would reload before the T-54 would accurately be able to kill it. Not to mention, you're probably liable to bounce at least 1 or 2 shots, just because the T-69 has some wicked angles, and the T-54 does not have super reliable penetration. Okay, so that was a small idea of how it would probably do against the other Reg 8 mediums. I could go over all day about how they would then compare in regular pub matches against all sorts of tanks, but I don't have that kind of time, so let's move on to how it does against Tier 8 premium meds, which is better. So I have 6 other Tier 8 premium meds listed. I'm not sure if I missed one. They added so many recently, so excuse me if I do miss one. I think I got the main ones anyway. The Type 59, which is obviously the fan favorite that everyone obsesses with, but is kind of, out of its heyday and a little overhyped in my opinion. The Panther 8.8, the Super Pershing, the CDC, the STA-2, and the T-34-3. Now, that's 6, and only 3 of those are actual preferential tanks, which is a huge advantage. The Type 59, the Super Pershing, and the T-34-3. Only 2 of those are for sale. Obviously, the Type 59 is very difficult to get. You have to get it through events and other such things. So, how does it really compare to these? And honestly, I've played all but the STA-2 and the Super Pershing before. Although I've faced plenty of Super Pershings, I don't have a lot of experience with the STA-2, but I have heard that it's not so great. That being said, I want to focus mostly on the Type 59, and now while you can't get the Type 59, so it's not like you could choose then to go get the Type 59 over this tank, it is the closest in comparison. People love the Type 59, and a lot of the soft stats of the Type 59 look a lot better than the RU, but personally, I'm not a huge fan of the Type 59. I actually found that I enjoyed the RU more, and I think maybe that was because the gun depression was much better. The gun handling is basically the same. The movement speed, the type's probably a little bit quicker. I felt that the armor was very similar in the turret, although I did feel like the RU's frontal armor was actually much more reliable than Type 59's. So there's that too. As for the other mediums, I mean, the CDC is nice because of its pen. It's very quick, but it has no armor. And it does get tier 10s, and the second it gets caught out, it's dead. Also gets ammo racked every time it gets shot. The Panther 8.8 is too slow and will struggle in tier 10s because of its lack of maneuverability. It's far less maneuverable than probably any of the others on this list, except for the Super Pershing, which is slow, but gets preferential matchmaking, so it does have that going for it. The T-34-3 has preferentials, and it's pretty good. It was buffed recently and is a very good tank now. And it does obviously, as I said, get preferential, so there's a positive there. It has 0 gun depression. The gun handling is terrible, but it does have alpha, so there's that. So overall, how does it really compare to these 6 other meds? Personally, I would put it at the best. Yes, I said it. I think it is better than the Type 59, which was probably better than the others. And I think that it will be one of those that may sort of creep in as the new Type 59, and people will slowly realize that it is actually a good tank. Good players will know how to deal with this tank, just like they did with the Type, but I think because of how good this tank's armor is, I think a lot of people will struggle with it. And because of that, it'll get a reputation. One of the things that made the Type 59 so great was people thought it was armor was great, and it really wasn't that great, it was good. But what made it great was the fact that the average population of the server, which, yeah, well, we all know, they cannot deal with anything that has armor when they don't know what the weak points is. So I think that it will be a great tank compared to these. So, yeah, I said it. The new Type 59, possibly. So that was a little long-winded, but I thought it was necessary to really give a true comparison to the other Tier 8 premium mediums, because those are the direct competitors to this tank. You could of course argue that any Tier 8 premium is a competitor to this tank, and you will be correct, and I will go over them a little bit, but only in really credit earning capacity. So there are 2 things that really, when you look at it buying a Tier 8, that you want from a Tier 8. One, you want to make sure that it's a fun tank to play, because otherwise you're not going to play it. You're not going to earn any credits if you don't want to play the tank, and also if you're not enjoying the tank, you're not going to play very well. It's as simple as that. And obviously the next thing is the credit earning capacity. You want to make sure it earns credits. Now, the T-54 earns pretty standard credits for a medium. It has, 250 alpha for its shot, and each shell basically costs 252 credits. So, in other words, you almost get a ratio of 1 credit for every bit of damage you do spend. Obviously, then you get the credit coefficient that comes with a premium, so you make a lot more than that. To put that in comparison, the IS-6, which has 390 alpha, has 1,025 credits per shot. So you actually get quite a lot more bang for your buck, haha, so to speak. Now, the KV-5 I think has the best, which they do that tank does 300 average damage with its shot, and it only costs 270. Although the KV-5 is, the KV-5. So, when you're shooting this tank, you're going to be making credits because the shells don't cost a lot and you do a decent amount of damage. So, as far as credit earning capacity, it's pretty normal. It's not outlandishly amazing, but it's pretty good. So, I would, rate that quite highly. So, let's move on to this tank's fun factor. How fun is the T-54 first prototype? Now, I hate playing Tier 8 premiums. I said it. I absolutely loathe having to play them. I don't really know why that is. I just hate them. I would rather play more games in my T-175 and make money off of that tank than have to play any of my Tier 8 premiums, which I have a healthy selection of. So, believe me, this is difficult for me to say and very odd, but I actually enjoyed playing this tank. I got it, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. It's a premium. I'll give it a shot, and we'll see how I do. And honestly, I enjoyed it. It was fun. And it's weird for me to have to say that because I just don't like Tier 8 premiums. But this tank was generally fun to play. Now, I'm not going to say I enjoyed it as much as I love playing my 50B or my STB or E50M or E5, E100, etc., etc. All those lovely, lovely Tier 10s. But I did enjoy playing this tank, which is huge for me because I really don't enjoy playing premiums. So it all comes down to this. Is the T-54 first prototype worth getting? And in my opinion, yes. It was fun to play, and it's good at making credits. Plus, it's going to bully a lot of people. That being said, I probably wouldn't get this tank if I was a new player or a not so great player, because you're going to struggle without the preferential matchmaker, and it's very difficult to make this tank work with a lot of 9s and a lot of 10s. So that about wraps it up for the T-54 first prototype review video. Let me know what you guys thought. Did you enjoy the video? Was it helpful to you? Did it help make up your mind? Are you going to get the T-54, or are you going to just skip it over? Let me know in the comment section below. I'll be making more videos on reviewing, various different things in the future. So if you have any suggestions, let me know, and I will see you guys later.